What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Today's video is going to be crazy. I'm going to show you 10 opening tricks and traps that you can try out to beat your opponents in less than 10 moves. And I'm going to do this by using my own games. So this is more like the second part of the video series that I started on my 10 quickest wins with dirty traps. The aim is to show you that what I teach you guys on this channel are real traps that work in practical games, which is why you have all the reasons to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if at all you haven't already. So let's get started. Game number 1. This was a 3-minute split, and I was playing against a 23-02 rated opponent. He started with e4 and I resigned. Oh wait, I played knight f6. I was just kidding. My opponent played e5, attacking my knight cause what else? This is called the Ali Hines defense, by the way. I played knight d5 and my opponent played the top played move. You can see with your own eyeballs. Pawn to d4. What did I do? Instead of playing d6, I sacrificed a pawn on b5 for free and white took it with his bishop. And now this is the O'Sullivan Gambit accepted, which I presented in the video that has popped up in the card above. I've won a lot of games against titled players, international masters, national masters with this dirty gambit. You should watch that video after you finish watching this. So I played pawn to c5. The whole idea is, in case black played something like d takes c5, I was going to win his light squad bishop like this for free, so I sacrificed a pawn in exchange for a bigger piece. This is check, plus I'm winning the bishop. What if white plays knight to c3? Well, the idea is I'll just take the knight, now attacking the queen. If bc, now I can freely take white's light squad bishop, and you can see how bad this position is for white. In the game that we are analyzing, my opponent didn't take on c5 after I played pawn to c5. He played pawn to c4, counterattacking my knight, but I was very glad to sacrifice my knight. Even right here, I played c takes d4. For example, if it took my knight, I was still going to go queen a5 check. Let's say queen d2, I was just going to take. And this was going to be good for my elbow. So because of this, my opponent did not take my knight. He took the d4 pawn. Now this is just the 60th move of the game, and I should be very careful because now my knight is under attack and I don't have queen a5 check to win the light squad bishop. So anyways, I played knight b4 with the idea of going knight c2 next and win black's queen like this, because this will come with check, and also attacking the rook on a1. So my opponent played knight a3, defending or simply covering the c2 square. But this is when I found queen a5 on the board, trying to do a discovery. This will also come with check. So seeing this, my opponent responded with bishop d2. What my opponent didn't see was this move. Queen takes a3 sack. This is only move 8, and I knew my opponent was going to lose. For example, if ba, I was going to play knight c2 check and end up winning the queen, emerging with the piece up and a better pawn structure, which is why my opponent didn't take on a3. He played queen c5, but all the same, I played knight c2 check and my opponent resigned. On the next move, I'm going to win white's queen on c5, so this is why my opponent resigned. Let's move on. Game number 2. This was a 1-minute bullet chess worth covering cause it was an instructive game. I started with pawn to e4. My opponent played pawn to c5. The Sicilian defense, oh, I hate this. But anyways, I played knight c3, the closed Sicilian defense. My opponent played pawn to d6. There's a line that I'm working on, you guys, where you play knight d5, provoking pawn to e6. That's the top played move. And now you relocate your knight to this square. It's like developing your queen's knight like this, which doesn't exist. So my knight is just controlling the d5 and the a5 square, by the way. I would love to go pawn to f4 in the near future. My opponent played knight to f6, attacking my undefended e4 pawn, and I played pawn to c3. Yep, giving up my e4 pawn for free, or is it? My 2173 rated opponent took my hanging pawn on the 5th move of the game, and I was like, wow. He didn't see that I had this move, queen a4 check, which is Kaspar's signature move, and on the next move, I was going to take the knight for free, which I did. Honestly, I was expecting my opponent to resign right here, just to show some respect, but he played knight c6, a walk of shame, and I played knight to f3, bishop e7. I could sense a bit of frustration by my opponent. At this point, he's not even thinking what to do. That's why I played bishop d3, because I very much expected him to castle shot, after which I was glad to meet him exactly in 10 moves like this. Oh boy, people don't listen, but anyways, let's move on. Game number 3. This was a 3-minute blitz match against a 24-10 rated opponent. I started with pawn to e4 again and he played pawn to c5. So you see, these higher rated players like playing the Sicilian defense. If it's not the Sicilian, it's the French defense or the Perk. And against d4, they like responding with the King's Indian defense. I mean, they like playing offbeat openings. Anyways, so I played knight to f3 and again my opponent played d6. I was like, this is going to be boring. But anyways, I played bishop c4 and then my opponent played knight to f6, a normal move by the way, attacking my undefended pawn on e4, and I knew my opponent was expecting me to go pawn to d3 or maybe knight c3, but I played pawn to e5. I want to make chess interesting, you know. I hate boring chess unless it's in the tournament. My opponent took the pawn, I took back with my knight. And now I'm threatening to mate my opponent. In one move which I knew was not going to happen, he played pawn to e6, the top played move, and instead of castling short, I played queen e2. I love playing queen e2 for whatever reasons. Now this is another opening that I'm working on, you guys, in the Sicilian defense. The idea is that if black plays knight bd7, which happened in the game by the way, I can just go ahead and take on f7, sacrificing my knight like what I did in the actual game. And after king takes f7, I was expecting my opponent to resign, but he went on to play a few moves. This is only move 8 and my opponent should resign. Yeah, like seriously. He played king g6 and I played pawn to h4. The idea was just to give him a check like this and someday push pawn to d5, paving way for my dark squared bishop. This is basically checkmate, you guys. He played h5, but this allowed me to go bishop d3 check. My opponent can't go back, so the only move for my opponent is king h6, after which I go queen e3 check, and since he cannot block this check with his elbow or his toes, he played the only move pawn to g5, after which queen takes g5 was checkmate. But technically speaking, the game ended on move 8 or 9. But let me just show you what can happen if black doesn't play knight bd7 after you play queen e2. So instead of knight bd7, which allows us to take on f7, the top played move is bishop d6, which black should have played, after which I was going to play pawn to b3 and let's say a6 for whatever reasons. I like meeting a6 with a4, stopping pawn to b5. If queen c7, double attacking my knight, I was going to play bishop b2, double defending my knight. Now material is equal, castle short, and b6. Yeah, from here it's just an equal game of chess. I was going to play pawn to h3, give it a chance, and trade the knights like this. I have all sorts of moves by the way. Pawn to d4 in the near future. So this is just how the game can go. Let's move on. Game number 4. This was a 1-minute bullet match against a 2194 rated opponent. My opponent started with d4 and I played knight to f6, e3, then pawn to d6. I didn't even know what I was doing by the way. The moment I saw knight to f3, that's when I started thinking. I was like, let me go pawn to c6. He played c4 and this is where I started picturing the reverse Tennyson gambit with black pieces, which I covered in the video that has popped up in the card above. Very interesting video. I played pawn to e5. Remember, I did not prepare for this when the game started. It just came along the way and this is how we play chess. He took knight g4. Well, I just want to take back, right? So he played e takes d4 and I took back with my bishop, and after I played pawn to h3, I was like, yes, now it is time for him to pay. I remembered to sacrifice my knight on f2 like this. After king takes f2, I played bishop g3. My opponent took the bishop, which he was not supposed to by the way, but I just went on to take his queen, and then rook g1 was played just in case. Then I played queen takes c1. At this point my opponent is confused. By the way, let me just show you what my opponent was supposed to play after bishop g3 check. This was a blunder. I missed one move. My light squared bishop was supposed to sit on e6. So in this position, what my opponent should have done was to go king e2, holding on to his queen. So technically speaking, when we are playing the Tennyson gambit with black pieces, we want our light squared bishop to be on e6, so that if king e2, we can go bishop takes c4 and mate white on d3. So I only included this game in this video just to show you how you can perfectly play the Tennyson gambit with black pieces. Let's move on. Game number 5. This was a 3-minute blitz match. My opponent was a 22-13 rated player. I started with e4 and he played pawn to d6, which is the perk defense. So the way I punish pre-movers is to rush with pawn to e5 against the perk. I knew my opponent was going to play knight to f6, and that's how I won his knight for free, and my opponent resigned. So this game ended in 3 moves against a 22-13 rated opponent. By the way, if you want to learn more about this trick and how you can continue if black doesn't blunder with this, watch this video that has popped up in the card above. You will thank me later. Anyways, game number 6. This was a 1-minute bullet match again, and this time I was playing against a 22-64 rated opponent. I started with e4. My opponent responded with d6, the perk defense again, and once again I rushed with pawn to e5 because I somehow knew that my opponent was going to pre-move knight to f6, which he did, by the way, and I was glad to take it. So I was expecting my opponent to resign right here, but he was stubborn. He just kept on playing, hoping that he would get back into the game because anything is possible in bullet. But I just continued with knight c3 developing normally, bishop e7. I played pawn to d4, castle short, bishop d3, c6, then queen h5. I played this very fast because I sensed that by this time my opponent was frustrated and he was just playing by the grace of God, whichever God he worships. He played rook e8, and I was glad to take on h7 with my queen once again, and my opponent resigned on the 8th move. So this is just how effective these gambits and traps can be, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on. Game number 7. Now this was a 5 minutes blitz game, and I was playing against a 2070 rated chess player, so he had all the time to find the best moves, but the game ended in exactly 7 moves. How? I started with e4 again. He played pawn to d6. I played pawn to e5. See, this is a 5 minutes blitz match, and I knew my opponent wasn't going to blunder with knight to f6. He played the correct move, d takes e5. And this is when I played knight to f3, attacking his pawn. By the way, my idea was that if pawn to e4 by black, I was going to play knight g4, and let's say knight f6, holding on to his pawn, I was going to play pawn to d3, turning this into the Tennyson gambit, because if they go pawn to h6, I was just going to simply sacrifice my knight on f7 like this. If king takes, I was going to win my opponent's queen like this, bishop g6 check, also covering the e8 square, so my opponent was going to lose his queen in 9 moves. So this is just how we transpose games, you guys. So that was all that was in my mind. But to his credit, my opponent didn't play pawn to e4 after I developed my knight on f3. He played knight d7, defending his pawn somehow. But I played bishop c4 because I like doing this. And then he played g6, wanting to fianchetto his bishop, develop his knight and castle short, but I played a brilliant move in this position. Bishop takes f7 check, which is also a bishop sacrifice. The only move for black is to take that bishop, and then I played knight g5 check. The whole trick with this line, ladies and gentlemen, is to win black's queen on d8 after knight e6. For example, if black played king g7, I was going to go knight e6 check, and on the next move I was going to win black's queen on d8. And let's say if they played king e8, I was still going to play knight e6 and win black's queen on d8 once again. So that's why my opponent played king f6 in this position, stopping my knight e6 nonsense. But I had queen f3 check. Again, my opponent can't go back because of the same trick. So right in this position, my opponent resigned. For example, if he took my knight on g5, this was going to be a mate in 2 like this. So that's why my opponent resigned on the 9th move of the game. Let's move on. Game number 8. This was a 3-minute splits match against a 2168 rated opponent. I started with e4, he played pawn to g6. This is called the modern defense, you guys. One difference between the modern defense and the perk defense is that in the modern defense, most of the times black delays the development of his king's knight. And because of this, I played d4, he played d6, I played knight c3, just developing normally. At this stage, keep in mind that I don't know whether this game is going to end in 8 moves or what. I'm just playing chess and putting all my pieces on the most active squares like bishop g5. So after he played knight to f6, I knew something was wrong because this is not how the modern defense is supposed to be played. So immediately I played pawn to e5, attacking the knight. My idea was to win black's queen, or if possible, winning the game so fast. He played knight fd7, but I just went on to play knight d5. So my opponent played pawn to f6, expecting me to take back. or maybe to retreat my bishop, but well, I just played knight f4 very quickly, allowing him to take my bishop so that I can trap his queen like this, or maybe I'll win the dark squad bishop like this. So my opponent didn't take the bishop, instead he took the pawn on e5, but still I played knight e6, and his queen was trapped on move 8. He played a desperado move, f takes g5, but I just played queen f3 because I knew I had all the time in this world to take his queen. At worst, my opponent played a desperado move, pawn to e4, after which I played knight takes g7, checkmate in exactly 10 moves. Let's move on. Game number 9, I was having black pieces against a 21-32 rated opponent. This game ended in exactly one move. So my opponent played pawn to e4 and I played pawn to c6, and oops, I won on time. Sorry for wasting your time. Let's move on. Last game, game number 10, against a 22-38 rated opponent. So this was a 3 minutes blitz match. I started with d4. My opponent played pawn to f6, and I knew he was kidding with me, so here is how we punish such jokers. Watch. I played pawn to e3, trying to be Hikaru. I played bishop c4. He played e6. So I knew he just wanted to humiliate me, embarrass me. Anyways, I played pawn to f4. He played d5, then I played bishop d3. Knight c6. There's no theory here, we are just playing chess. Queen h5 check. But he played king e7. I played knight f3. I just wanted to mate him. He played knight b4. But I played pawn to b3, letting him take my bishop, and after I took back, he played bishop d7 and I played bishop a3, and my opponent resigned right on move 10 because this is almost checkmate. The only sensible move that black can play here is pawn to c5, after which I would have taken on c5 with my bishop, and that was going to be checkmate. So this is just how we punish law breakers, especially those who want to embarrass you. Anyways, I have a new feature on my website where you can become my partner by simply registering for my affiliate program that will allow you to make some passive income by simply promoting my courses to others. So thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, bye bye.